What if I told you the person you fear the most isn't out there? It's the one living inside you. The part you've buried, denied, and pretended doesn't exist. That's where your true power hides. Every human being carries within them a hidden mirror, a reflection not of the person they show to the world, but of the one they silently avoid. This mirror reveals what the conscious mind refuses to accept, the parts of ourselves that make us uncomfortable, ashamed, or afraid. Every time we judge someone harshly, every time we say, "I could never be like that," we are unknowingly staring into that mirror. The qualities that irritate us in others are often echoes of what we've buried deep within. The arrogance we despise, the fear we mock, the greed we condemn, the anger we suppress. They are all fragments of the same truth we deny in ourselves. It's easier to point fingers than to look inward. It's easier to call someone selfish than to admit that, beneath our generosity, lives a craving for recognition. It's easier to call someone arrogant than to face the hidden pride that wants to be seen, heard, and respected. When we suppress these emotions, we don't erase them, we push them into the shadows, where they gain strength and silently influence our behavior. The things we repress don't disappear. They transform into projections, spilling out through our judgments and reactions. Every time we react strongly to someone's behavior, we're not just reacting to them, we're reacting to the reflection of something unresolved within us. When you understand this, the world becomes your mirror. Every encounter, every irritation, every emotional trigger becomes an opportunity for self-discovery. The friend whose success makes you secretly jealous is showing you your own unacknowledged desire for achievement. The person who manipulates others is reminding you of the moments when you too used charm to get what you wanted. The loud, boastful personality you can't stand may simply be expressing the confidence you've been too afraid to own. Life constantly presents these reflections, not to shame you but to wake you up. Our mind, in its quest for purity and perfection, tries to divide the self into good, bad. We cling to the good, kindness, humility, patience, and exile the bad, greed, pride, rage, envy. But by doing so, we split ourselves into fragments. The parts we reject don't vanish, they retreat into the unconscious, waiting to emerge through subtle behaviors, emotions, or dreams. They influence our decisions, shape our relationships, and color our perceptions, all while we remain unaware. What we don't own within ourselves will eventually control us. The anger we suppress becomes passive aggression. The pride we deny turns into resentment. The fear we hide becomes paralysis. To face the shadow is to dissolve this illusion of separation. It is to understand that the traits you reject in others are simply unintegrated aspects of your own humanity. The truth is, you contain all possibilities within you. The sinner and the saint, the coward and the hero, the liar and the truth teller. The person who denies this complexity lives a divided life, constantly at war with themselves. The one who embraces it begins to live authentically, no longer pretending to be pure, but striving to be whole. This doesn't mean you should act out your darker impulses. It means you should acknowledge them, understand their message, and integrate their energy into conscious awareness. The anger you hide can become assertiveness. The greed you suppress can transform into ambition. The envy you feel can evolve into inspiration. Each shadow emotion carries a seed of strength, but only when it is brought into light. When you stop judging these aspects and start listening to them, they lose their power to control you. Imagine the freedom of walking through the world without the weight of judgment. Imagine meeting people not through the lens of projection, but through the clarity of understanding. When you accept your own flaws, you no longer need to condemn others for theirs. Compassion grows naturally from self-awareness. You begin to see that every person, like you, is wrestling with their hidden self. You stop seeing enemies and start seeing mirrors. You stop trying to change others and start transforming yourself. The journey inward is uncomfortable because it dismantles the illusions that protect the ego. It forces you to see how easily you can become what you despise. But in that discomfort lies the seed of transformation. To look at your shadow is not to invite darkness. It is to illuminate it. The moment you name your hidden emotions, they lose their power to harm you. The moment you accept your inner contradictions, you begin to reclaim your lost energy. Every judgment, every irritation, every moment of blame can become a path to deeper self-knowledge. The person who triggers you the most is your greatest teacher. They are showing you what part of yourself you've abandoned. The anger you feel toward them is really the resistance to seeing that part reflected back at you. When you understand this, you stop running. You start listening. You ask, "What is this person showing me about myself?" And the answer begins to unfold. The shadow holds everything you've disowned, but also everything you've lost. Hidden within that darkness is your vitality, your passion, your creativity, your voice. Every time you reject a part of yourself, you also reject the life force that comes with it. The more you integrate your shadow, the more alive you become. You reclaim the fullness of your being. You no longer fear your emotions because you understand their language. You no longer judge others because you've made peace with your own contradictions. The shadow is not evil, it's human. It's the unpolished, untamed part of you that still remembers who you really are before the world told you what to be. When you face it, you stop living as a half-person pretending to be pure, and you begin to live as a whole being embracing both light and dark. The world will always mirror back what you refuse to see. The question is not whether you have a shadow, but whether you have the courage to look into it and recognize yourself in its reflection. There are parts of yourself you have locked away, buried beneath layers of politeness, discipline, and control. You tell yourself they are gone, that the anger, jealousy, sadness, or rage no longer exist. But repression is not destruction, it is containment. The emotions you suppress do not vanish. They wait. They grow quietly in the dark corners of your mind, feeding on every denial, every forced smile, every unspoken word. They learn your weaknesses, your fears, and your triggers. And when the time comes, they emerge, not as gentle reminders, but as monsters that speak through your actions, your words, and your pain. Repression begins innocently. As children, we are told not to cry, not to shout, not to be angry. We learn that expressing certain emotions leads to punishment, rejection, or shame. So, we start to hide them. We smile when we want to scream. We act brave when we are terrified. We pretend to forgive when we are still bleeding inside. Over time, this becomes habit. We start believing that control equals strength, that suppression equals maturity. But beneath the surface, every unexpressed emotion starts to form a shadow self, a silent reservoir of everything unspoken. The mind can't erase emotion, it can only store it. Each time you suppress a powerful feeling, it becomes energy without direction. That energy doesn't disappear, it mutates. The anger you bury turns into irritability, sarcasm, or sudden outbursts over small things. The fear you suppress becomes anxiety or avoidance. The sadness you hide becomes emotional numbness or depression. What begins as self-control slowly transforms into self-destruction. The monster doesn't appear overnight. It grows quietly through every act of denial. We live in a world that glorifies emotional control but forgets the wisdom of emotional honesty. We are taught to stay calm, stay composed, stay rational, as if feeling deeply is a weakness. But repressed emotion is like pressure in a sealed bottle. The more you contain it, the more explosive it becomes. One day, the lid breaks and all that hidden pain rushes out at once, through words you regret, actions you can't undo, or choices that leave scars. The monster you've been running from was never outside of you. It was the part of you you refused to acknowledge. The truth is, emotion demands expression. It wants to be seen, heard, and felt. When you deny it, it finds another way to speak. It hides in your tone when you say, "I'm fine." It creeps into your relationships as distance, distrust, or control. It whispers through your thoughts when you lie awake at night, replaying old wounds. Repression doesn't silence emotion, it disguises it. You might think you've moved on, but your body remembers every unspoken truth. The tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your chest, the fatigue that never fades. These are the echoes of emotions trapped without release. The longer you suppress, the more disconnected you become from your true self. You start to lose touch with what you really feel, want, or believe. You become a stranger to your own soul, performing stability while chaos brews beneath the surface. This is why people often break down unexpectedly. A simple argument, a small rejection, a few harsh words, and suddenly everything collapses. It's not the moment that breaks you, it's the years of holding back that finally overflow. The monster was never sudden. It was slow and patient. When you repress your darkness, you don't destroy it, you give it power. It begins to control you unconsciously. You might find yourself repeating toxic patterns, hurting the people you love, or sabotaging your own peace. You'll say, "I don't know why I did that." But somewhere deep inside you do. The emotion you buried is finally expressing itself, but now it speaks through your behavior instead of your voice. The shadow takes control because you refused to. The only way to disarm the monster is to face it, to sit quietly with what you feel instead of running from it. To let yourself feel anger without judging it, sadness without rushing to escape it, fear without labeling it as weakness. When you give emotion permission to exist, it begins to lose its destructive power. What was once chaotic becomes understandable. The monster starts to shrink the moment you stop pretending it isn't there. Repression is often disguised as strength, but real strength is honesty. It takes more courage to admit, "I'm hurt," than to pretend, "I'm fine." It takes more power to cry than to wear a mask. Vulnerability is not the absence of control, it is the mastery of truth. To feel deeply is not to fall apart, it is to stay connected with the life force that makes you human. The monster inside is nothing but your pain asking to be understood. Look at the moments you've lost control, the arguments where you said too much, the decisions made in anger, the emotions that overwhelmed you. Each of those moments is evidence of something deeper waiting to be heard. Instead of blaming yourself, ask, "What emotion have I been silencing for too long?" The answer to that question is the beginning of freedom. Because repression breeds chaos, but awareness brings peace. Every emotion you hide carries information about your inner world. Anger reveals your boundaries. Fear points to where you need courage. Sadness shows you what still matters to your heart. These emotions are not enemies, they are messengers. When you listen, you learn. When you ignore them, they rebel. They turn into addictions, obsessions, anxiety, depression, all forms of unexpressed truth trying to find a voice. The monsters born from repression don't come to destroy you, they come to awaken you. They remind you that wholeness cannot exist without acceptance. The more you try to silence your emotions, the louder they will demand to be felt. The more you hide your pain, the more power it gains over you. Repression may create temporary peace, but it always leads to long-term turmoil. To live freely, you must make peace with what you've buried. The darkness within you is not meant to be feared, It is meant to be faced from the moment we are born. The world begins to divide us. We are told what is right and what is wrong, what is acceptable and what must be hidden. We are praised for being polite, kind, obedient, selfless, and punished for being angry, selfish, loud, or defiant. Slowly we learn that being good earns love and belonging, while expressing our darker sides risks rejection. And so, we begin to edit ourselves. We carve out fragments of our being to fit into society's narrow definition of what is good. We become what others want us to be. But in doing so, we drift away from who we truly are. Goodness is not the same as wholeness. To be good is to conform to external standards. To be whole is to integrate every part of your inner being, the light and the dark, the soft and the wild, the gentle and the fierce. Wholeness doesn't mean purity. It means honesty. It means standing face to face with your contradictions and saying, all of this is me. The desire to be only good is the root of suffering because it creates an internal war. You end up rejecting half of yourself, the emotions, impulses, and instincts that don't fit the image of who you think you should be. The truth is, you weren't born to be perfect. You were born to be real. Perfection is a performance. Wholeness is liberation. When you chase perfection, you live as a divided self, pretending, pleasing, proving. But when you choose wholeness, you allow every emotion, every flaw, every shadow to have a voice. You stop pretending to be light while denying the darkness that shapes it. You stop hiding behind the illusion of goodness and begin to live with depth, honesty, and power. The human soul is not a clean canvas. It is a tapestry woven from both chaos and clarity, both creation and destruction. You carry within you the potential for compassion and cruelty, for wisdom and foolishness, for love and hate. Denying that duality doesn't make you pure, it makes you incomplete. The more you reject your shadow, the more it controls you from the dark. You cannot heal what you refuse to see, and you cannot be whole while pretending to be only light. Our culture celebrates positivity and condemns pain. We're told to stay positive, to move on, to be the bigger person. But healing doesn't happen by escaping darkness. It happens by walking through it. The light you seek is not found by avoiding the dark parts of your soul. It is created by bringing awareness into them. True peace doesn't come from perfection. It comes from integration. It comes from knowing that your anger has wisdom, that your fear has lessons, that your sadness has depth, and that even your mistakes hold meaning. Every emotion has a role. Anger protects your boundaries. Sadness connects you to compassion. Fear teaches humility. Desire reveals longing. When you suppress one side of yourself, you lose access to the wisdom it carries. The more you chase only light, the more you fragment your being. You become like a half-drawn circle, outwardly polished, inwardly hollow. The pursuit of goodness without wholeness creates emptiness, because goodness alone cannot hold the complexity of being human. To be whole is to live with contradictions and still find harmony within them. It means you can be kind without being weak, strong without being cruel, humble without erasing yourself. It means you can hold your anger without letting it consume you, and hold your love without turning it into dependence. Wholeness is the ability to say, I contain multitudes, and to stand unashamed in that truth. The idea of goodness is often born from fear, fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of being unloved. We perform goodness to earn approval. But wholeness doesn't seek approval, it seeks truth. When you embrace your full self, you no longer need validation. You understand that your worth is not determined by how good you appear, but by how authentic you are willing to be. To live in wholeness is to live beyond shame. It is to stop apologizing for being human. Think of the people you truly admire, not the flawless ones, but the ones who are raw, real, and grounded in truth. Their presence feels magnetic because they are integrated. They have faced their shadows and no longer need to hide behind a mask. They are not pretending to be saints. They are simply whole human beings who have made peace with their imperfection. Their light shines brighter precisely because it has passed through darkness. You cannot reach wholeness by denying your darkness. The path to light always passes through shadow. When you look at your anger instead of running from it, you discover where your boundaries were crossed. When you explore your jealousy, you uncover your unfulfilled desires. When you confront your fear, you find your courage waiting on the other side. Every shadow emotion holds a hidden treasure, but only if you dare to face it. The goal is not to purify yourself into something saintly, but to embrace your humanity so fully that nothing within you remains unloved. Every flaw, every failure, every forbidden thought becomes part of your truth. You stop dividing your soul into good and bad and start seeing everything as raw material for growth. The cracks in your character don't make you broken, they make you real. The pain you carry isn't a curse, it's a teacher. Wholeness is not found in erasing your darkness, but in letting it coexist with your light in balance and awareness. When you begin to live from this state of wholeness, the pressure to be perfect dissolves. You no longer fear judgment because you no longer judge yourself. You stop needing to prove your worth through moral performance. You stop fighting against your nature and start flowing with it. You become peaceful not because life becomes easy, but because you have made peace with yourself. The light and the dark, the saint and the sinner, the strength and the fragility, they all belong to you. And only when you hold them together do you truly understand what it means to be complete. To know yourself sounds like a noble goal, something pure and enlightening, but in truth, it is one of the most dangerous journeys a human being can ever take. Because to truly know yourself, you must be willing to face the parts of you that terrify you. The desires you deny, the fears you bury, the wounds you hide, and the truths you refuse to speak. Self-knowledge is not a gentle light that comforts. It is a piercing beam that reveals everything you've spent a lifetime avoiding. It strips away illusion, exposes hypocrisy, and demands brutal honesty. Most people never find themselves because they are afraid of what they might see when the mask falls away. The path to self-understanding begins with discomfort. You start to notice that much of what you call you is borrowed. Beliefs handed down by family, culture, religion, society. You start to see that your thoughts are shaped by conditioning, your habits by fear, your choices by approval. The moment you realize this, your old identity begins to crumble. You begin to ask questions that shake the foundation of your life. Who am I beneath the roles I play? What do I want beyond what I've been told to want? What am I hiding from myself? These questions are not comfortable. They tear apart the familiar sense of self you've built to survive. But this destruction is necessary because you cannot find truth while clinging to lies. To know yourself is to face your contradictions, the parts that love and hate, the parts that give and take, the parts that heal and harm. You must be willing to see that you are both light and shadow, both noble and flawed, both capable of creation and destruction. This duality can be frightening because it shatters the illusion of being purely good. But only when you accept your inner opposites can you begin to live authentically. Wholeness is not found in denying your darker instincts, but in understanding them. The anger, jealousy, greed, and pride you suppress are not there to shame you, they are there to teach you. They reveal your vulnerabilities, your unmet needs, your unresolved pain. Every emotion you fear holds a truth about who you are and what still controls you. Self-knowledge demands courage because it doesn't flatter you, It confronts you. It shows you the parts of your personality that manipulate, that crave validation, that judge others to protect a fragile ego. It reveals the masks you wear to feel accepted and the lies you tell yourself to feel safe. It exposes how often you betray your own truth to fit in, how often you settle for comfort instead of growth. It doesn't let you hide behind excuses or blame others for your pain. It turns your attention inward and says, "This is your life. What are you doing with it?" That moment of realization is terrifying because it takes away the illusion of control you've built around your identity. But within that terror lies the doorway to strength. When you stop running from who you are, you reclaim the energy that was trapped in denial. The courage to face your darkness becomes the foundation of your power. You begin to see that your flaws don't make you weak. They make you human. The wounds you once hid become sources of empathy. The fears you once avoided become guides. The very parts of yourself you once rejected become the key to your freedom. Real self-knowledge doesn't make you perfect. It makes you real. And reality, no matter how uncomfortable, is always stronger than illusion. There is a reason why many people prefer distraction over introspection. It is easier to scroll, consume, and perform than to sit in silence and confront the truth of your being. Because in that silence, the truth starts to whisper. It tells you what you really want, who you've become, and what you've lost along the way. It asks you to stop blaming the world for your unhappiness and to take responsibility for the life you are creating. This is why self-knowledge is dangerous. It destroys every excuse you've built to avoid growth. Once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. Once you know what you're capable of, you can no longer pretend to be powerless. True self-knowledge is not achieved through thinking alone. It comes through experience, through falling apart, through failure and reflection. You don't discover yourself by reading about who you are. You discover yourself by confronting the moments that reveal who you are, the way you react to loss, to rejection, to fear. These moments show you what lives inside. Each crisis in your life is an invitation to go deeper into self-awareness. Pain, though unwelcome, is often the most honest mirror of the soul. It reveals the hidden expectations, attachments, and illusions that you've built your identity upon. To know yourself is to stop pretending that you are only what the world sees. It is to explore the hidden motives behind your actions, to question why you seek love the way you do, to ask why you fear abandonment or failure so deeply. It is to peel back every layer of performance until only the raw truth remains. And sometimes that truth will break your heart, but beneath the heartbreak lies something sacred, an authenticity that no one can take from you. The person who knows themselves can stand in solitude without feeling lost, because their worth no longer depends on external validation. Self-knowledge also means confronting your potential, not just for goodness, but for greatness. There is power within you that frightens you, the kind of power that could change your life if you stopped doubting it. But to access it, you must first confront the fear that guards it. You must face the part of you that says, "I'm not enough." You must face the voice that tells you to stay small, to stay safe. Because that voice is the echo of every wound that has ever tried to convince you that your light is dangerous. But your light and your darkness are born from the same source, the raw energy of your being. When you accept both, you stop living as half a person. Self-knowledge will not make you comfortable. It will unsettle you, shake you, and strip away everything false. But in that process, you will uncover something unbreakable. You will see that you are not just the product of your past, but the creator of your future. You will realize that the strength you've been searching for outside has always lived within the parts of you you feared to face. The gift of knowing yourself is dangerous because it gives you power. The power to change, to choose, and to live with intention rather than illusion. You spend so much of your life trying to hide the parts of yourself you don't like. The anger, the jealousy, the shame, the fear, the guilt. You tuck them away behind smiles, behind success, behind silence. You convince yourself that if you ignore them long enough, they'll disappear. But the truth is, the more you hide your darkness, the more power it gains over you. Every emotion you repress, every memory you bury, every part of yourself you deny becomes energy trapped inside you. Restless, waiting to be expressed. The energy you use to hide your darkness is the same energy that could set you free. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is the key to your freedom, your creativity, and your purpose. Inside your shadow lives everything that makes you real. The anger you've buried carries the energy of passion and courage. The envy you suppress hides your deepest desires and unexpressed potential. The fear you deny conceals your capacity for awareness and transformation. Every shadow emotion is a doorway to self-understanding, but you must walk through it instead of closing it. The moment you stop running from your darkness, you begin to reclaim your power. Because power is not found in pretending to be light, it is found in the ability to hold light and dark in your hands and not be afraid of either. The world tells you to stay positive, to focus on the good, to let go of the past. But healing is not about denying darkness, it is about transforming it. You cannot paint over pain with positivity and expect peace. You must face it, feel it, and understand it. Every piece of your shadow carries information about your wounds, your needs, your strengths, and your boundaries. The energy you once used to suppress those parts of you can become the fuel that drives your evolution. When you stop fighting your inner world, that energy begins to flow again, turning suppression into creation. Think of how much effort it takes to hide who you are. The constant self-monitoring, the fear of being judged, the guilt of feeling wrong. It drains your spirit. That same energy, when redirected, becomes creative force. The artists, poets, thinkers, and visionaries who changed the world were not free from their darkness. They faced it and transformed it into beauty, wisdom, and movement. Their art was born from pain. Their power came from truth. They didn't escape their shadows. They danced with them. Every creation that moves the human heart comes from someone who has met their own darkness and turned it into light. Your shadow is the source of your authenticity. The more you try to be perfect, the more you disconnect from your truth. Perfection is sterile. It has no life force. But your imperfections, your struggles, your contradictions, they make you alive. When you allow yourself to feel without judgment, when you accept your flaws instead of hiding them, you open a channel for raw, honest expression. This is where creativity is born, from the intersection of pain and awareness. The most powerful stories, music, and ideas are not born from perfection, but from the courage to reveal what hurts. The energy of repression is heavy, like a weight pressing on the soul. It keeps you stuck in cycles of fear, guilt, and shame. You might feel tired without knowing why, disconnected without understanding the reason. That's because hiding your shadow requires constant effort. You have to monitor every emotion, edit every reaction, and control every thought that threatens to expose what you don't want to feel. But the moment you turn toward it instead of away, that energy shifts. The heaviness becomes movement. The fear becomes awareness. The shame becomes compassion. The energy that once kept you trapped becomes the force that sets you free. Freedom is not the absence of darkness. It is the mastery of it. It is the ability to face your shadow without running, to listen to its message without being consumed by it. When you integrate your shadow, You no longer live under the control of unconscious forces. You stop reacting blindly and start responding consciously. You stop being ruled by what you suppress and begin to guide it with understanding. The parts of you that once sabotaged your peace become allies. The rage that used to explode turns into assertiveness. The sadness that drained you becomes empathy. The fear that held you back becomes awareness of risk and courage to move through it. Facing your shadow also transforms your relationships. When you accept your own darkness, you stop judging it in others. You stop projecting your insecurities and fears onto the people around you. You start to see others with compassion because you recognize the same struggle within yourself. This is how love deepens, not through perfection, but through honesty. When you no longer need to hide your flaws, you create space for others to be real with you. Connection grows where judgment once lived. That is the freedom of authenticity. To be fully yourself and allow others to do the same. There is an immense amount of creative energy locked within your pain. The emotions you've been taught to suppress, anger, grief, desire, are not weaknesses. They are signals from your inner world calling you to evolve. When you ignore them, they fester. When you acknowledge them, they guide you. Your anger may reveal where you've been silenced. Your sadness may point to what needs healing. Your jealousy may show you what you truly long for. Every dark emotion, when understood, becomes a source of insight. The work of transformation is not to destroy your shadow, but to listen to it until it turns into light. Imagine what would happen if you redirected all the energy you've spent hiding into creating. Imagine channeling your sadness into music, your anger into boundaries, your fear into awareness, your guilt into empathy. You would no longer be divided within yourself. You would no longer need to perform light while hiding dark. You would become whole, a person unafraid of their own depths. The freedom that arises from this integration is not the kind that floats above pain. It is the kind that moves through it with strength and grace. Your shadow is not a curse, it is a reservoir of untapped power. It holds your suppressed energy, your hidden gifts, your forgotten truths. When you finally face it, you unlock everything that has been waiting for expression. The energy that once fueled shame begins to fuel creation. The pain that once silenced you begins to give you a voice. The darkness that once chained you becomes the very force that breaks those chains. Freedom is not found in the absence of darkness, but in the courage to face it, to understand it, and to transform it into something that serves your soul. Healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to be someone else. It's about finding the pieces of yourself you've lost along the way. The parts you hid because they were too loud, too sensitive, too strange, too honest. You didn't lose them by accident. You gave them away piece by piece to survive. You abandoned your anger to be loved, your vulnerability to be respected, your joy to be taken seriously. But all those fragments are still within you, waiting to be reclaimed. Healing is not about adding something new to yourself. It's about bringing those pieces home. It is not transformation by replacement, but transformation by remembrance. Integration is liberation. The moment when all the parts of you finally sit together in peace instead of at war. You spend years trying to fix yourself, trying to become better, stronger, more spiritual, more healed, thinking healing means erasing the past. But you cannot move forward by cutting pieces of yourself off. The child who felt unseen, the teenager who felt misunderstood, the adult who feels not enough. They all still live inside you. When you try to silence them, they don't disappear. They speak through your fears, your reactions, your exhaustion. The voice of your shadow becomes the echo of what was never heard. Integration means sitting with those inner versions of you, listening to what they needed, and giving it to them now. It's not about getting over what happened. It's about understanding how it shaped you and allowing it to finally rest. The idea that healing means becoming a different person is seductive. It makes you believe there's a perfect version of you waiting at the end of all this pain. Someone untouched by sadness, someone endlessly calm, someone immune to fear. But that's not healing, that's fantasy. True healing is messy, cyclical, and deeply human. It's not about replacing your brokenness with light, but about learning to hold your pain with compassion. It's realizing that your wounds are not stains to be removed, but doorways to self-understanding. Integration means no longer needing to escape any part of yourself, because you have made peace with all of it. The light, the dark, the soft, the fierce, the scared, the brave. The pieces you've abandoned carry wisdom. The anger you suppressed taught you what boundaries feel like. The sadness you buried showed you how deeply you can love. The fear you avoided revealed your instinct for protection. Every emotion you once rejected was trying to keep you safe. They may not have used the right language, but their message was always for your survival. When you integrate them, you stop fighting with yourself. You realize you don't have to destroy your defenses. You just have to understand them. Every coping mechanism, every pattern, every wall you built was built for a reason. Integration is not tearing down those walls overnight. It's learning to open their doors. You can't heal by running from your reflection. The parts of you that embarrass you, that make you cringe, that remind you of who you once were, they deserve tenderness, not rejection. The moment you stop seeing them as flaws and start seeing them as parts of your story, you begin to free yourself from shame. Shame keeps you split in two, one part performing, the other hiding. Integration melts that division. It allows you to show up as your full self, unedited and whole. Wholeness is not perfection, it's honesty. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing that nothing inside you needs to be erased. When you start reclaiming your lost parts, something shifts. The anger that once scared you starts to give you strength. The sadness that used to drown you begins to deepen your empathy. The fear that once froze you becomes awareness. You start to notice how your inner world is interconnected, how your emotions, memories, and instincts all form one living system. Integration means allowing that system to work together instead of fighting itself. You begin to trust your own rhythm. You no longer chase constant positivity or punish yourself for being human. You understand that the light within you needs the dark to define it. Without night, there is no dawn. Without shadow, no depth. This work takes courage. It requires looking where you've avoided looking, feeling what you've avoided feeling, forgiving what you've avoided forgiving, especially yourself. You may have left behind parts of you that remind you of mistakes, of heartbreaks, of moments you wish never happened. But healing doesn't erase the past, it reclaims it. When you face those memories with compassion, you retrieve the parts of your soul that got stuck there. You stop being haunted by your history because you've welcomed it home. Integration turns your past into wisdom instead of pain. So much of human suffering comes from self-rejection, from the endless war between who you think you should be and who you actually are. You punish yourself for feeling too much, for needing too much, for caring too deeply. But every too much was a survival strategy, a signal from your heart that it was still alive. Integration means no longer seeing those emotions as weaknesses, but as evidence of your depth. When you allow your humanity to exist without judgment, you become free. You no longer need to seek validation or prove your worth through control, success, or perfection. You begin to move from authenticity instead of performance. In integration, love becomes your foundation, not the soft, idealized kind of love that avoids pain, but the grounded kind that says, I see all of you, and none of you needs to hide. You start to live from a place of inner coherence, where your thoughts, feelings, and actions align. You stop fragmenting yourself to fit expectations. You begin to experience peace, not because life becomes easier, but because you stop being divided within yourself. That is liberation. The freedom to be exactly who you are, without apology. Every piece you reclaim adds color back to your inner world. The parts you once called broken were never broken. They were simply waiting for your attention. As you gather them, you begin to feel a quiet strength rising. Not the strength that comes from dominance or control, but the strength that comes from wholeness. You are no longer at war with yourself. You no longer need to chase healing as if it's somewhere outside of you. You realize it has always been an inner reunion. A remembering that every piece of you, even the ones you thought you had to hide, belongs. Integration is not the end of your journey. It's the point where you stop running and finally come home to yourself,